Hey guys, welcome back to John's Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm John, and thank you guys for being here. It is the preview episode for Week 6. I can't believe we're already on Week 6. We're already 5 games through the NFL season, which is unfortunate, but we still have a lot of football still to play. So if your fantasy football team isn't doing well so far, maybe you're 0-5, maybe 1-4, maybe 2-3, you're looking to make some trades, make some moves. In this episode, I'm going to help you with that a little bit. So don't be down and out. You still got a lot of time to improve your team and get back into fantasy playoff contention. So if you guys watched last episode, I talked about one running back, or I didn't really mention his name, but I talked about one running back that I was going to post on my Patreon that I thought was going to have a really good week this week and that you guys should trade for moving forward. And that guy that I posted was Breece Hall. I posted him on the Patreon. On Saturday, he ended up having a huge game against the Broncos. A lot of people thought he was going to have a big game. I was just emphasizing that, telling people that you should trade for him because now might be the last time you can before he blows up against the Broncos. And he did 177 rushing yards and a touchdown, 28 fantasy points, his best game of the season so far. And I think he's going to have great games moving forward as well. So if you can still get your hands on Breece Hall, I would. If you have him, I would keep him. But the thing I wanted to mention about my Patreon is that I actually just posted this week, the other day, a keep, buy low, and sell high trade post and an article on my Patreon, which I did after week 2. And in week 2, that's where I said you should get guys like Josh Jacobs, who blew up in week 4 and 5 last week, had a solid game. So giving you guys some advice. I also had Jamar Chase after week 2 as my number 1 player that you should buy low on. And hopefully you guys saw that and were able to buy low. But definitely head over to the Patreon. All you have to do is be a part of tier 1 to get access to that post. But in that post that I posted the other day, 8 players I say that you should keep, 7 you should buy low, and 6 that you should sell high. So definitely check that post out and feel free to message me on the Patreon if you're in tier 2 or above, and I'll give you some help on making trades. You could send me lineups in your league, your lineup, and I'll help you and give my opinion on your trades. But in this episode, I'm going to first talk about the 3 players that I think are important that just went on IR this week, Justin Jefferson being the most important one. I can't believe Justin Jefferson is on IR, the number 1 fantasy football pick in most of your fantasy drafts, and he's on IR. So he's going to miss at least the next 4 games. Honestly, he might miss 5 or 6 games depending on how bad the injury is. They're not going to rush him to come back, especially they're 1-4, and they might be even worse when they get Jefferson back. It seems like they only might win only 1 or 2 games in the next 4 weeks when he's gone. So let's say they go 2-2. Now they're 3-6. I think they're even going to go 1-4 again, or 1-3 in the next 4. They might be 2-6 going into the week that they're supposed to get Jefferson back, but they might not rush him back. Kirk Cousins, there's trade rumors with him. It's just a bad situation for the Vikings. But if you have Jefferson on your fantasy football team, should you panic or should you not? Should you trade him away or should you keep him? Well, I'm here to tell you that. And I think if you have Jefferson and you're 5-0 or 4-1 or maybe even 3-2 with a good team, you should keep Jefferson. If you think you're still going to be able to be fine and make the fantasy playoffs with Jefferson on your IR slot, then I would keep him and I wouldn't trade him. If you can get a player like Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne, maybe pick him up and throw him in. But if you think you could still do well enough and go, 500 or maybe a little bit better without Jefferson, then keep him. Now, if you're 0-5 and you have Jefferson, if you're 1-4, if you're 2-3 with a pretty bad roster, not scoring a lot of points in your league, then you need to trade Jefferson. And a trade package that I would do and giving up Jefferson for would be a guy like Adam Thielen and Jordan Addison. Addison's obviously going to step up when Jefferson out, but when Jefferson comes back, Addison will take a little bit of a back seat. But we see Thielen getting so many targets in Carolina, and I don't see that defense getting any better. So if that defense is bad, a lot of teams are going to score points on them, meaning the offense is going to have to throw the ball and target Thielen. Now, another trade package you could do is Jefferson to get a guy like Breece Hall and Brandon Ayuk. And even if you can't do that, even if the other team in your league won't do that, I'd be fine with you even getting Breece Hall and a lower tier receiver, maybe even like DeAndre Hopkins or Zay Flowers, who have been having pretty good weeks recently. So definitely, if you're struggling, if you don't think you're going to be able to make the fantasy playoffs with Jefferson out, then definitely make a trade for him or make a trade away Jefferson because you're going to need those wins now. So look to trade Jefferson away if you're not confident in your team or if you haven't had a lot of points scored in your league. If you're in the bottom half of points scored and your record isn't great, you're going to need to trade Jefferson. Forget about getting a better tight end and a better quarterback. You need to focus on receiver and running back for that. Now, the other guy is De'Von Achane, and he was having such a good season so far. I picked him up in as many leagues as I could. I started him last week, and he had a great week. Now, this week, they would have had a great matchup against the Panthers, and now it seems like it's going to be left to Mostert to have the big week. And Achane is out for at least the next 4 weeks. He was placed on injured reserve with a knee injury, and it seems like he's going to miss at least 4 weeks, maybe even more, and I'm just concerned about him as I am about Jefferson missing even more games than just 4, because they said that they're not going to rush him back either. They're saying he's not going to miss the entire season, but the fact that they're even mentioning that makes me think that he's might miss 5-6 games at that. So if you want to trade Achane, and you can, I would get a guy like maybe Kyren Williams for him. I think that's worth your time. If not, if you can't get a guy like that, then I would just throw him on your IR spot, and hopefully, you probably didn't draft him anyway, so he was probably just a bonus. You picked him up on waivers, so throwing him on IR, you probably won't miss him too much, and then when he comes back, you're hoping he gets integrated into the offense again and dominates those snaps with Mostert and Jeff Wilson there. But if you wanted to get rid of him now, I think Kyren Williams is pretty fair value for him. Now, the other guy is Anthony Richardson, and he's going to be out for 4 to 8 weeks, they're saying, which is pretty wide range, but he's on IR. Gardner Minshew is going to be the starter, which it doesn't really affect that offense too much. It just sucks that Richardson got hurt because he was doing so good in fantasy. So if you do have Richardson, maybe you could pick up Gardner Minshew. Maybe you could trade for a guy like Stafford. Getting Kupp and Nakua back is great for Stafford. Kirk Cousins, I don't think is going to be on the uphill. I think he's on the downhill. Like I said, the Vikings are struggling. But if you have Richardson, you just throw him on your IR spot. He has no trade value because of how long he's going to be out. But hopefully you can pick up Minshew, and hopefully you could pick up another quarterback that's available and just stream at quarterback based on matchup, because I'd hate for you to give up a good receiver or a good running back, especially a starter, for a guy at a quarterback that you're going to start, but it's not going to be that much of a difference between that guy and, let's say, Minshew is going to get you 18 points. Now, Minshew's not terrible. He doesn't have the rushing upside that Richardson has, but he's got a solid floor. He's not a bad passer. We've seen him do good things on the Eagles in the past. And the last guy is James Conner, also put on IR. I don't know how this all happens, but lots of injuries. It seems like Emari Demercado and Keontae Ingram are going to be the 2 backs that split time. Officially on the depth chart, a lot of people have been talking about Ingram being ahead of Demercado. I think this week against the Rams, they're going to use Demercado more because he scored a touchdown last week, and Ingram is coming off of an injury, so they're going to have to integrate him into the offense. So I think Demercado for this week and Ingram maybe a little bit more long-term is a better option. James Conner usually gets hurt. Last season, he really didn't. This season, of course, just got put on IR. So James Conner, you're probably not going to be able to trade. If you can trade him and get some value out of him, definitely try to do that. But if not, you could just throw him on IR and hope that he comes back in those 4 weeks. Now, moving on to the games I love and the games I hate, as always, I have 3 games that I love for this week. And the number 1 game I love, the highest scoring game that I think is going to be this week, is the Cowboys at the Chargers, Monday Night Football at SoFi Stadium. The Chargers had a bye last week. I actually think the Chargers are going to win this game, not because the Cowboys looked bad last week. They usually bounce back pretty well, but it's because the Cowboys are on the road. Their defense doesn't play that well on the road. And the Chargers, they just had a bye. So they've been game planning for this game for a while. They watched how the 49ers beat the Cowboys, and they're going to implement some of the same things that the 49ers did to beat the Cowboys on Monday night. So I think the Chargers are going to have a great game. I think Eckler, he's going to be back. You have him in your lineup. Herbert, you're having in your lineup. Keenan Allen, of course. You might want to take the chance on Palmer or Quentin Johnston if you can. Gerald Everett at tight end. I know he disappointed last week, but I think he could have a good game this week as well. So anybody in that Chargers offense, you're upgrading. Same thing with the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb complained about targets last week, so we see Jamar Chase complain about targets, and he gets 50 points in fantasy. I don't think that CeeDee Lamb's going to get 50, but I do think that he's going to get at least 20 fantasy points, probably score a touchdown. Now, Jerry Jones, I know, came out and said, we want to spread the ball around, kind of dampening CeeDee getting a lot of targets, but I still think CeeDee's going to get a lot of targets. Pollard, CeeDee, Jake Ferguson, I expect them to have good games. Same thing with Dak. He's been disappointing in fantasy. This is the week you can start him. I think that's going to be a high-scoring game. The second game I really like is the Colts at the Jaguars. I just talked about Richardson being out. I think Minshew can score a lot of points on this Jags defense. We saw the Jags finally get going in London last week against the Bills. I know the Bills defense was banged up, but still impressive to see Lawrence and Ridley and Kirk and Etienne having a huge rushing game. All of them connect. So I think they're back at home this week. I think they're going to have a great game. So Lawrence, you're upgrading Engram, Kirk, Ridley, Etienne. You're trying to get those guys into your lineup against the Colts, who don't have a great defense. And then on the Colts side, Michael Pittman, not a great week last week or the week before, but we saw the first couple weeks of the season getting targeted a lot, so I still like him. Jonathan Taylor, they're talking about him getting more work, and Zach Moss just had the best game of his career against one of the best run defenses in the Titans, which is crazy. But you're upgrading players. I mean, if you have Moss, it's tough to sit him after that, so he's potential RB2 or flex. Jonathan Taylor, I'd like a little bit less than Moss this week, even though they want to get him more carries. That doesn't mean he's going to have more than Moss. I still think they're going to phase Moss out and phase Taylor in, but that might not happen super quickly. So upgrade players in that matchup. I like that game. I think it's going to be high scoring. And the last game is the Vikings at the Bears. We saw Jefferson go on IR. Addison stepping up. He's tending to an ankle injury, but I think he's going to be fine with that. KJ Osborne, I like, could be a streamer this week. Hawkinson, Madison even could be an option this week against the Bears because the Bears have a bad defense. And we saw DJ Moore and Fields go off last week, and I think they could have a really good week this week again. Obviously, you're starting Fields if you have him, and same thing with DJ Moore, and same thing with Cole Kmet. After 2 good weeks for him, I think you start him as well. And in terms of the running back situation, Roschon Johnson still in concussion protocol. It seems like every time somebody's put in concussion protocol, they miss at least one game. So if he sits and Khalil Herbert is expected to miss a couple games, we see maybe Deonta Foreman come and have a decent game against the Vikings. Now, the Vikings run defense isn't great, but it's not terrible, so it's middle of the pack. I don't love Foreman that much as a streamer. I'd rather Madison, but I think DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, they're going to have good games, and obviously, if you have Addison, you're definitely starting him. KJ Osborne, streamer. Hawkinson, you're starting him. Kirk Cousins, I'd like you to trade him away, but if you wanted to use him for one more week, you can here. Now, games I hate is actually the game in London, which is unfortunate because I think it'll still be a good game to watch, but it's the Ravens at the Titans. Like I said, it is in London. I just think it's going to be a low-scoring game. So Derrick Henry, downgrade him. DeAndre Hopkins, I think after his high usage last week, you can start him. But other than that, there's nobody on the Titans that I would start. Maybe Derrick Henry. He has a tough matchup, and he's been getting outsnapped by Spears, which is terrible to think. But DeAndre Hopkins is the only guy I would really consider starting. Derrick Henry, you're considering, but you're fading a little bit. And then on the Ravens side, I can't believe they lost the game last week to the Steelers. But if you have Lamar, you're probably getting him into your lineup. But he's been so terrible that if you have another option, I'd probably explore that option. Like, I'd rather a guy like Matt Stafford than Lamar this week. Mark Andrews, you're definitely starting. Zay Flowers struggled last week in a good matchup. He had a lot of drops, and so did all the Ravens receivers. But I do like Zay Flowers because the Titans' pass defense usually isn't good. So it's a tricky game, but I think it's going to be low scoring. So the upside, I don't think, is there for those players. And the last game I hate is the Patriots at the Raiders. I can't believe the Patriots lost 34-0 last week. Crazy. There's nobody that's startable on this Patriots offense. Maybe Ramondre Stevenson, but that's it. Hunter Henry was having good weeks and then 0 last week. So Ramondre Stevenson, he'd have to get catches out of the backfield to be anywhere near relevant, but I probably wouldn't start him. And then on the Raiders side, Jacobs, you're starting. Devontae Adams, you're starting. Garoppolo, you're probably not starting. It is a revenge game, so it's going to be a super interesting game to watch with Garoppolo playing against the Patriots, Josh McDaniels playing against the Patriots. So it'll be an interesting game to watch. I just think it's going to be low scoring at the Raiders in Las Vegas. So I downgrade all the players in that matchup. But that is my podcast for today. So thank you guys for watching. And definitely head over to the Patreon if you want to see that 8 players you should keep, 7 players to buy low, and 6 players to sell high post that I posted earlier this week. Otherwise, I will see you guys on my Sunday live show on TikTok on Sunday morning. So thank you guys for joining, and I'll see you guys next week.